Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission study session for Monday, June 27th, 2022. I'd like to thank all the commissioners for your service as usual. We'll jump right into the study session agenda. A1 is discuss regular agenda items. That takes us to the regular agenda. C1 is recognition, which we will skip that. C2, consider approval of the May 23rd, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Any comments, concerns, questions, misspelled words, names? Everything's good? All right. That takes us to D1, the public hearing. Conduct a public hearing and consider the request for a detailed site plan with special exceptions for a retail service use childcare facility on an approximately 3.003 acre tract located at the southeast corner of Valley View Lane and Mercer Parkway, and take appropriate action. Chris is presenting this.
Yes, I am.
Anything we need to, I know there's a lot of special exceptions.
I was gonna say, this is really, and that's gonna be the reason it's coming to y'all to begin with, this is special exceptions. The use is allowed by right, so we're not challenging the use or anything like that. That's not why this is coming here, but it is for the 4 special exceptions that they are requesting. That's bringing this case through P and Z, and if approved here, we'll take it to city council. I guess, some things to keep in mind, and I'll say this again during the meeting, but it is gonna be, this will be the first phase of what's the two-phase development. The use in this case is going to be for a childcare facility called Kitty Academy. And the special exceptions are going to be in regard to landscaping, in regard to setbacks, parking, and also fenestration for the building, or windows and doors. Those will be the primary things we'll touch on. But if anybody does have any questions that they'd like a little more detail on now, prior to going down to the chamber, I'm more than happy to answer anything.
Super. Any feedback from the notifications that were sent out?
We have not received any feedback, at least not yet.
Okay, super. Commissioners, any questions, concerns?
The exceptions are just the site plan for just this building on that property, not the 2 future retail.
Correct, yeah, this is only, the stuff that's on the northern half is conceptual only. It'll still have to come back through as a detailed site plan, so the focus is gonna be only on the southern half. Thanks.
There's no timetable in terms of like when that phase 2 would actually occur, when you start with the.
Not officially, the impression that I've been given is that they want to move fairly quickly on the northern half, once the southern half is completed, but there's no official timetable that we've been presented with.
My question, or at least my concerns were, I knew it was allowed by right, but again, just oversaturation of business that's already adjacent to this new development.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's allowed by right, so you can't really do anything about that, but it just seems like, does that community need another
Childcare.
childcare? And so I asked Andy, which is a commissioner of ours who lives in that, and obviously he's not, would wish he had some different type of development. We have a council member who also lives in that area. I'd like to hear his opinion, if that's okay, in terms of just that business use, but I know we can't do anything about it, but again, you have 2 different daycares next to one another. Do the residents wish they had something else? Yes, they probably do, but I guess there's not much we can do in terms of changing the by right.
So, yeah, I'd like you to go over that, because I thought maybe they were connected in some way. One is a school, a Montessori school, or right, a school, or do they have daycare afterwards, or is it because we don't have another?
It's got really young kids. I mean, I don't know definitively what they're, but it has really young kids there, like toddlers. I mean, it's not,
Oh, it's not a school.
it's not
then.
like
It goes all the way up to first grade. They stop at first.
They stop at
And
first.
then after school program afterwards.
Okay.
We're older than first.
Older than first, so you'd have to bring them in after school.
they
They
would
bus
bus from
people in.
the school that they went to
Okay.
over there for an after-school care,
Yeah.
daycare.
So they're not connected at all, yeah.
There's no association between them and the Steam Spark Montessori that's next door.
My question as it relates to Steam Spark is, did they have any of these exceptions in their site plan? I mean, with I mean,
They have four
it seems like the
sections.
parking is in the front there, so that might have been granted an exception for that.
Theirs were, I know they had 4 exceptions, and I can't recall all of them right now, but parking was one, fenestration was one,
And they were also set back farther from
Yeah.
Valley View.
yeah, setbacks. Those were oh, and there was a roof slope one as well for Steam Spark.
So they had parking and fenestration were all comparable in their detailed site plan requests with the exceptions.
Well, the exceptions by the letter of law were similar, like which 2 sections they were asking the exceptions from. But given this overall site is being developed in 2 phases, so that site was developed all in 1 phase. It's just 1 building, 1 site. So even though it's set back from farther from Valley View, you can still see the building. Whereas this one, they're required to be platted in 2 separate lots. Some other complications exist, so it's farther set back from the other site. And there, technically, the front of the building still faces Valley View. Here, the front of the building does not face Valley View. It's kind of interior, wherever the future lot line is gonna be.
Yeah.
But going back, yes, they had similar special exception requests like this one.
I guess, and the reason I ask is because it seems if we had forced them to comply to code, and then we made exceptions for another, it might, but if it's similar, it doesn't raise that issue for me.
Any other questions?
And just they're saying there's an access road through to Montessori school, like did that require an agreement with the Montessori, or that's just something they're doing on their own?
So no agreement with Montessori. There is a shared drive that actually splits the property line between the Montessori and this property. So there's no agreement needed for that. And then there's going to be shared access though throughout the site between what will become phase 1 and phase 2 that will provide a connection all the way up to Mercer.
Can you share why they want to go in next door to another school?
The
Right
owner,
there?
a representative of the developer will be here tonight to answer that question. Again, as far as the use goes, we really can't say
I know.
anything just because,
Just wondered why they would, my
Yeah.
goodness.
You can hold them to a higher standard if you want.
Yes, you can. So the special exceptions are what is being considered tonight.
Right.
As you correctly pointed out, it's not the special exception, so yes, technically you can hold them to all the design requirements of the PT 99. The only explanation we have is it's free market, any use can go next to even an existing same use. So because they were allowed by right, there was no ground for us to even consider that question.
Let's bring it up, sure.
I know.
That's kind of why I had the opinion last time when I dissented against it.
The other daycare.
Yeah, no, not the other daycare. I mean, we have plenty of daycares around here. It seems like that's the new dentist fad, with plenty of dentists that keep opening around more,
Yeah.
not even more daycares. But I'm just saying that I know we can't justify land use, but I'm just saying we need to start looking in terms of land use.
Absolutely.
more so than
We can
just
look at the
saying it's
requirements of the design of the code itself.
So go over why
still
they're,
wanna-
on their landscaping, they're coming off of the required landscaping.
Yeah, why don't Chris pull up the site plan? I think that would be easier to explain.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
excuse me, I'm gonna go to my, here it is, my presentation for this, which does have the site plan on it.
While he's pulling that up, can I ask another question?
Mhm.
So has there been any kind of design standards or design criteria that has been established by the Board of Education that essentially may take into account windows or doors as potential access, or with all the school shootings happening lately, where they're starting to become more stringent, where maybe they're impacting criteria or code in terms of number of doors, number of the percentages that the city's
Exit and
actually lays
entry
out there from an
points.
architectural standpoint, but from a security standpoint.
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question, but that is a very good Very good question. As you would think with all the recent events, there would be more.
Some kind of criteria, right? Some kind of, someone's probably gonna have to come up with a criteria
But
that's.
this would be umbrellaed under like Health and Human Services rather than Department of Education, I think, because it's not
School.
right.
No federal
It's also private, I guess, the public school, they will have a better teeth.
But the Department of Health and Human Services, they're the ones that license daycares and,
So, Mr. Bertle, to answer your question, along Perrin Lane, there are two things. There's one, a city water line that runs right along the edge of the street, and there's also a utility easement from the Montessori that goes all the way to the street corner. So because of that, there's no way for the street trees here to be
Get another
planted.
one in.
Correct. So what has been I guess there was a discussion between the applicant Public Works. And so what they've done is, regarding, I guess, what could be planted, and they've provided, per their plan, some landscaping in the form of shrubs and other ground
Yeah,
cover
I saw
along
that.
the southern edge to help provide additional screening, and also try to make I guess, a good faith attempt to provide some screening along there, even though they can't provide the street trees. They've also provided more interior shade trees and landscaping than they necessarily would need to per the PD in an effort to try to offset what they're not able to provide along Perrin Lane.
Well, in my viewpoint, there's always not a shade tree that's gonna be, huge. There's things like crepe myrtles and the smaller magnolias and the whatever. Many things could go into there. But it's not within the tree limit that we have. They're just off one tree limit, correct? One tree. They're off one tree.
They're off one tree along Mercer, but they have added some, it's really more because of the sidewalk and access that they have built around this side of the building that's preventing that. But they have added additional crepe myrtles to try
Okay,
to
yeah.
offset that.
All right.
Perrin Lane's the one where they're significantly off, but that's because there's other factors
Right.
involved with that.
Got it.
While you have the site plan and this pulled
Mm-hmm.
up, I'm actually interested in the parking. I know we worked really hard on defining our parking minimums, and this site seems severely over-parked. I
Mm-hmm.
realize there may be some pickup, drop-off, peak times. However, I'm just curious about our thoughts on that parking. I know that the special exemption is specifically around the location of the parking, but also strictly in terms of the number of parking. It's significantly beyond those minimums.
And I
Yes.
believe we brought that up with the applicant because their minimum, or their required is 27, they're proposing 44. However, there was a lot of pushback on what is required by the Kiddie Academy operations and their template. Same for the building design, any kind of recommendation staff had was always met with the answer that that's the template they have to follow. Because you're absolutely right, that's way more parking than what the code requires.
How much staff are they gonna have?
you said 15, I think?
15 full-time. I can't speak to any part-time employees, but they are expecting north of 200 students to be attending this.
They don't have cars.
Yeah,
Right. They're just drop off and pick
it's
up.
just 15 staff members.
So I can't imagine that it would be a company policy they had to have 44. Are they doing by square foot? Why would they have so many over what we had required? That's almost double. That is
Sure.
double what we require.
I'll have to defer to the applicant for why that extent. I believe their intent is to try to have some of that as additional shared parking for the second phase of development as well.
Second phase,
Like whenever the north of the site.
Whenever
develops,
this
they're saying that
portion-
it might be
Developed.
shared.
Yeah.
Could you just not have them come back and add the parking then if the use requires parking? It's still landscaping now, you can always put concrete back
I mean,
later.
that's,
You could, what they're going to argue though is that this southern parking here, since they're already making this drive that's going to run throughout the property, they're going to argue that, well, since we're already putting that in, we'd like to go ahead and include the parking that's going to eventually be there anyways.
So it's just the rule, it's just minimum parking. You don't really have maximum parking standards,
No,
right?
not for
There's
99.
nothing you to really enforce.
For PD 99, we do not. It's for the basic zoning, we did introduce the parking maximums.
That makes sense.
What impact, if any, would this have on the second phase with respect to the type of businesses that might go in there? Would they be limited in any way because you've got two schools there? Like, can I put a massage parlor there if I want to? or-
There is no
as-
distance separation requirement of sorts
I
from,
just didn't know if there'd be any impact to those future businesses not being able to utilize that.
As long as PD 99 would allow it, and there's, obviously there's gonna be some restriction there, that would be the control for what businesses end up going there, not the school itself or daycare itself.
one of the reasons the requirement, we will see is stated in the condition that Chris has on the recommendation or the recommended action is the plating requirement. Because that was one of the conditions we made because of the joint access. Otherwise, the northern property would have hard time having its own access from Valley View as well as Mercer.
So what
that's a joint
impact or do we
direction.
know that as far as traffic flow or congestion on the Mercer Parkway side? Is there any consideration to that, given,
For the daycare
drop-offs and that
itself,
sort of thing?
for the daycare itself, Public Works has not made a call to require a traffic impact analysis, or this is not significant enough to cause, to generate a study or show impact for that daycare use.
What are the parameters to indicate such a study? Because as I read, it was
Number of
221 students, could be
Yes.
quite a few cars.
It depends on how many trips are gonna be generated. 221 is kind of the approximate number. However, if Public Works has not determined that that's a significant enough trip generator, then it would not be required.
So where's the drop-off on this?
Drop-off is gonna be this area right here, which will have a portage that goes across, and per their drawing allows up to 4 cars to be parked there, and this will be a better zoomed-in version. But you see
So-
it right here.
Will they be able to park on Mercer Parkway while they're waiting for their children to get out, so to speak, or waiting in
No.
line in their
Mm-mm.
cars?
That's not safe.
This
so
won't
they
have like
would-
a dismissal, right, like you see with a school. It'll be people getting off work sort of and so I don't think, based on my kind of anecdotal experience, I don't think that you'll see like what you see at an elementary school. where you've
Them
got-
lined up and lined
Yeah,
up. and
it's
lined up
not,
and
it's
lined up.
really, kids usually don't get released till their parent is already there to pick them up, or that's
And it's
how
on
our
their
experience.
schedule.
So they don't have a
Not the
set time
school's
Staggered time.
We're
or-
done
Get off.
5 o'clock or whatever, 3
It's
o'clock.
usually like if you are not there by that set time, it's more cost to the parent versus
$1
the
a
kid.
minute.
Yes,
Yeah.
versus them being released out of the building. It's a safety issue, they will never release the kids. Based on the age group that they will be taking care of, they will not be released.
So the Montessori school is obviously part of the notification, but they haven't responded with questions or
I
concerns?
believe the owner of the Montessori school have reached out to staff at least twice.
They reached out early on in this process, and then they did reach out again, I think Monday of last week. And however, as far as like a formal comment or anything like that, they haven't made one.
So what does reaching out mean in this sense? Like, what were they,
They literally called by phone.
what did they want, what
They
were they
just wanted to
expressing
find
concerns
out
or?
what
They-
was going
yeah.
on after they saw the zoning sign being put up.
It's just, yeah. And it's possible there, since this is a public hearing, it's possible they're there to speak tonight. I don't know what their plan is. But it was more exploratory than it was actually voicing any concern.
What's their entity name? Do you remember?
Which one, the Montessori?
Yeah.
Steam Spark.
So what's the background on Kitty's Academy?
As I know, there's a couple locations here in North Texas. Overall, though, they're based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And they will have 2 representatives who are going to join us via Zoom during the meeting that will be able to probably well, they should be able to provide more information regarding kind of what's required of them, what their development looks like, and how everything kind of operates as far as Kitty Academy goes.
How old is so they come here from New Mexico, do they have anything in the Dallas area?
They do. They have one. I'm
Yes,
blanking
they
on
are
the city name,
a
but there's.
franchisee, so there are more
I
than
say
one
McKinney
location.
may have one. So that there's at least one in the area. I think
Kitty
there's
Academy
two.
Or it's not the first one.
And those are doing well? Do we know?
I think
We
I'm
don't know
familiar
that.
with this, yes.
That'd be a
Yeah,
question
I've
for.
heard. It's a franchisee, yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, they are doing well,
Are they
or
doing-
who knows how the next economy turn will be, but, yeah. I should have asked the property owner for Steam Spark. That would have been on the list here.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
You know who that is, because it's not.
Not
You
offhand.
have the address on the list. Let's see. So whichever is number 14 on the list
Okay.
should be the Kitty Academy.
Thanks. Mojo Capital.
Any more questions for Chris? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item A2, discuss agenda items for future planning and zoning commission consideration. Any items commissioners would like to either ask questions on or add to the list?
So the consultant that was being hired for everything we did with the joint,
Yes, so
just where that is generally.
yes, so I was gonna take a moment to just give a brief update. We are on schedule for the July 11th joint meeting with Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. It will start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we are hoping to break for dinner at 5:30. And then council will go on their business, and our regular meeting will start at 7. We are not planning another study session for that night. On the joint meeting agenda, we'll have the comprehensive plan update as the agenda item 1, and the agenda item 2 would be target area 1 rezone. Staff will be present there to provide overview, but mainly it would be the consultants leading the discussion. Before going to the comp plan, I want to say a little bit about the target area 1 rezone. This is a direct kind of step from the I-35 corridor vision study. One of the first recommendation out of the 4 target area rezone was target area 1, immediately west of 35 along Valley View. So we have hired a consultant to do that rezoning process, and the recommendation from staff was to extend the station area code west of 35. So that's the process for the target area 1 rezone. On the comprehensive plan side, the consultant will talk about the overall public engagement plan, the new website that they will be putting together for the comprehensive plan, also overall marketing and outreach for the study. Then we'll also talk about kind of the stakeholder advisory committee, their formation, the technical advisory committee, and some other useful tools that the consultant have recommended to promote the study, as well as get people involved. So
Thank you.
that's where we are.
Gio, did you have a?
Yeah, but I'm gonna defer this off.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we adjourn at 6:54 PM. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Monday, June 27th, 2022. It is 7:00 p.m. and I am calling the meeting to order. I'd like to thank all of the commissioners for your service this evening. And we'll start with item B, citizen comments. This agenda item provides an opportunity for citizens to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on any matter that is not posted on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the commission should complete a citizen comments registration form and submit it to the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. There's a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak with a reasonable limitation on speakers on one topic or item with a maximum of 15 total minutes on the same topic item. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. The Planning and Zoning Commission is not permitted to take action on any subject raised by a speaker during citizen comments. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission may have the item placed on a future agenda for action, refer the item to the Director of Planning for further study or action, briefly state the existing city policy, or provide a brief statement of factual information in response to the inquiry. I don't have any citizen cards, but is anyone here who wants to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the regular agenda items. Sarupa.
Sorry, can you hear me better? Okay, let's start again. So tonight is a special night for all of us. This is Chairman Moore's last meeting with us, and we'll surely miss him. I have something little written for him, and I wanted to say it to the group as well as all of us, the new staff members, as well as the applicants. Chairman Moore has been a tremendous asset for the city and a respected leader for the Planning and Zoning Commission. The commissioners, both old and new, have thrived under his guidance and support. He has been a vocal advocate of good planning practice and always encouraged new commissioners to participate in planning-related educational activities. He invites open dialogue and fosters team development in a caring and effective manner. I have had the privilege to work with several board and commission members before in my career, and I can confidently say that Chairman Moore outshines the norm and takes his duties and responsibilities beyond the usual requirements. He's a great leader, and staff and commission enjoys working with him in furthering the city's long-term vision. Thank you so much for your time and help and guidance that you have given us and the commission. And with that, I'll hand it off to the mayor, Mayor Dai.
Well, well, well. So, here to celebrate Chairman Moore on his wonderful 6-year tenure, serving as both a commissioner and chair during said term. And I'm thankful for American Airlines today and for the Department of Homeland Security for getting me home on time to ensure that I could be here tonight, because I did not want to miss this. This is an important celebration and moment, and you deserve all the recognition and accolades that are coming your way. But your commitment to the city has never been questioned, and your constant and continued service is something to which we should all aspire. I can personally attest to the impact you've made as you've worked with and guided this group, but also through your commitment to the arts, through the special committees that we formed that you've served on. Those efforts have been commendable, and you can leave holding your head high as your fingerprints are all over the city and the impactful changes we've seen under your leadership. And so, while you'll be missed from this committee, I know you share my feelings that the current and next group of commissioners are ready to carry the mission forward. This isn't a goodbye, as we know you'll be serving on a new group starting next month. And for that, I say thank you for continuing to stay involved. You look around the room here with Sharupa's words, and from the commissioners, I know how they feel as well. You're a true asset to this community, and the way that you give your time, your energy, your effort, your knowledge, it is something that we all benefit from. And I know that the council's decisions and some of the things that we've enacted over the years wouldn't have been possible without that leadership and guidance. So I just want to say thank you for that. And, you know, without all of you, without our commissioners, without the individuals that serve on our boards in our community, you know, our city council, we wouldn't be able to steer this city in the direction that you all want it to go. It's your guidance and what you allow us to glean from what you've uncovered through discussions with residents, businesses, and various community partnerships that allow us to understand what is going out there and to be that second level of voice. And you also help us here as the first line of defense for new developments looking to come through the city to ask important questions. And Mr. Moore, you've asked some great ones. And you know, looking through the minutes over the years as we go through it, I'm always impressed with what you've contributed. And so I want to say thank you, truly. It's been an honor having you serve as the chair of the P&Z the last 6 years. We have a few things for you. You can come down, or I can walk up to you. I don't, you know, however you want to play it. But we have a plaque from the City of Farmers Branch. David R. Moore, Planning and Zoning Commission Chairman, July 2016 to June 2022, with heartfelt appreciation for your exceptional leadership, service, and dedication to the City of Farmers Branch, serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission. We also have some notes and some cards and some gifts, you know, probably from our swag room that Allison has carefully put together. She unfortunately couldn't be here. She was on the trip with all of us and is headed elsewhere afterwards. But those are some additional tokens of appreciation for your time serving here. And with that, I want to turn it over to you to allow you to say a few words if you would so like.
It's been an honor. 6 years has flown by, and I would like to thank the city staff, all the different variations of the city staff. In 6 years, there is a little bit of turnover, and we've had our fair share in the planning area. But the staff is always extremely supportive of this commission, and I think does a great job preparing the cases and bringing the commission up to speed so that we can then take the ball and ask the right questions. So thank you, city staff. I want to thank the council and the mayor for listening to us, and especially probably the thing that I'm most proud of was the selection of planning and zoning to be the committee chair, or whatever it's called, for the I-35 corridor study. That was a surprise to us and an honor to us that we took seriously. And I think we delivered back what was expected or more. So I really appreciate that. And then to all the citizens, I just like to always encourage people that, you know, it's fine to send emails and make phone calls and do all of those things, but the best thing to do is to sign up for a committee and come to meetings and get involved, because your voice is heard when you do that. And sometimes when you send an email or 10 emails, your voice is heard, but it's heard in a different way than when you're serving on the committee and you come every meeting for 6 years. It makes a difference. So thank you.
One more time for Chairman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Dye. I also want to recognize Councilman Omar, who is in the audience tonight. Thank you for attending this meeting. And we will move on to item C2. Consider approval of the May 23rd, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Commissioners, any comments, questions, or I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as they're presented.
I have a motion from Vice Chair Zavala. Second?
Second.
Second from Pat. Sorry about that. And all in favor? It is unanimous. Now on to item D, public hearing. Conduct a public hearing and consider the request for a detailed site plan with special exceptions for a retail service use childcare facility on approximately 3.003 acre tract located at the southeast corner of Valley View Lane and Mercer Parkway, and take appropriate action. Chris.
Good evening, everyone. It's already been said, but again, congratulations, Chairman Moore.
Thank you.
We'll try to make this hopefully somewhat brief as we go through this evening, but I want to start with that. Agenda item D1, this is going to be for a childcare facility known as Kiddie Academy at the southeast corner of Valley View Lane and Mercer Parkway. This site currently is undeveloped and it does sit in our PD 99 zoning district. The use itself is not why this case is going to be before you this evening, but it is going to be the special exceptions, of which there are 4 that the applicant is requesting. It's also, it should also be noted that this is the first phase of a 2-phase development project, and what we are going to be focusing on is the area that's in the darker shaded gray. The northern half is conceptual only and will also be required to go through a detailed site plan process. So just taking a look at the overall site itself, you do see there, generally in the middle, the building that will be constructed and house the Kiddie Academy. There are going to be 2 drives, one that will access Mercer Parkway directly. The other will access a shared drive with a neighboring Montessori that runs north and south and connects to Valley View Lane and Perrin Lane. In addition to that, there will be additional parking spaces provided. There will be a porte-cochere provided to provide some additional cover for families dropping off their children, and then some recreation areas outdoors. Overall, again, the access that's shaded in yellow will be a shared drive between both phase 1 of this development and phase 2 of this development after it has been replatted, and will allow access to both the southern half, which is what we're seeing today of the development, and the northern half in the future. And the parking provided, 27 spaces required. There are going to be 44 provided per this proposal, which, since it meets the minimum parking threshold, does meet the requirement of PD 99. Landscaping requirement for this is going to be only 5% for the site itself. There is 20% landscaping provided. I will note that that 20% calculation is only going to be for the site to be developed in front of you for the Kiddie Academy and not for the entire 3-acre tract. So really kind of the southern 1.2, 1.3 acres of this overall site is what we're calculating for that site landscaping, which does comply with PD 99. Street trees required. Along Mercer, there are going to be 6 street trees provided. Technically, there should be 7, but due to a sidewalk, due to additional walkways because of the Kiddie Academy layout, they can't quite hit that street tree requirement, but they have supplanted that with 2 crepe myrtles and also some additional ground cover and shrubs to help provide additional screening and additional beautification of that side. The bigger one in question, and the one that really the special request is for, is going to be along Perrin Lane. They are lacking, but there are some outstanding circumstances for that, which I'll cover a little more in a little more detail once we get to the special request section. The overall building elevation that you see here, the top one is what's going to be technically facing towards Valley View and interior to the site. What you're staring at is the main entrance. There is going to be a porte-cochere that comes out further than that and extends over that drop-off zone. The southern portion, or the next photo down, which is going to be this one, will be what faces Perrin Lane. And then you have the west elevation. This is what you will see if you're driving along Mercer Parkway. And then this east elevation will be what you see as you drive north and south along that shared drive with the neighboring property. I'll go ahead and get into the first special exception, which is building replacement from the required front setback. Per PD 99, 50% of the front facade is to be located along the 10-foot setback line, and then 50% of that front facade can be located up to 50 feet from the front setback, which is a long-winded way of saying any development along here, at least 50% of it needs to be along the 10-foot setback. In this instance, the way the lot is laid out currently, that would require that the building be set back from Valley View Lane 10 feet. However, given that this is phase one of 2 phases, and there is going to be replatting, given the position of the building, we are going to look more at the Perrin Lane side of this, which has been improved to look more like the front of a building. It's not just your typical rear retail building facade. It's improved, and there are going to be some active areas within that setback, which will be the playground areas and outdoor learning area. So again, going through the proposal, because of the setup of this building on this site and how future development is going to look, it is technically within the 50-foot, I guess the entire building sits within that 50-foot allowable setback that is provided as an allowance in PD 99, but it exceeds the 50% requirement of the entire building that could be away from that. So the full building is away from that 10-foot setback line, not just 50% of it. Again, though, it will be an active area with outdoor recreation learning areas, and it's not the typical rear facade that you typically see with retail uses, commercial uses, office uses. And staff is supportive of this special exception. The next one's going to be the 60% fenestration requirement for ground floor uses, which is doors and windows. Windows and doors will be provided for each classroom to allow daylight to show through and provide natural lighting within the classrooms themselves. However, because of the use and also because PD 99 kind of intended for that requirement to be more for shopfront glass for ground story retail on a multi-story building, it doesn't really fit with what is being proposed here as a requirement. This is only going to be a one-story building. The use itself, with it being daycare, really requires more security and privacy to be provided rather than just floor-to-ceiling windows along this facade. And the PD does recognize relief from that by having this special exception requirement that will allow an applicant to request that they not have to meet that requirement specifically. Staff is supportive of this special exception as well. The third special exception is going to be for surface parking behind the front facade. Again, per the PD, no more than 25% of parking can be located in front of the building. Given the proposed layout, this is a bit of a unique site where parking will be technically in front of the building, but because of the overall proposed development, with there being a phase 2 on this, the parking itself will actually end up being interior to the lot, which is the entire intent of this requirement to begin with. That not be street-fronted parking, it's actually going to be interior, and because the proposed parking does line up with that intent, staff is supportive of this proposed special exception. And then the last one that I touched on a little bit earlier is going to be for the landscaping. Again, the big one's going to be along Perrin Lane. There is an existing city water line, and there's an existing private utility easement along Perrin Lane that prevents street trees from being planted. So the applicant has provided as many street trees as they could before they'd be getting into that area where the water line is and really the easement. The applicant has provided additional shrubs and ground cover, as well as provided additional interior landscaping and shade trees to the site in an effort to offset what won't be along Perrin Lane. Again, given the circumstances, staff is supportive of this special exception. Overall, the West Side Plan is one of our older comprehensive plans, and because of that, because of the changes that have happened since the West Side Plan was first implemented, the proposed use itself doesn't quite fit with the high-quality office and research and development uses, But given the surrounding areas currently that are there and we've seen change over time, it is in line with the existing uses that are around this area. We did send out 20 zoning notification letters, including a letter to Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD and Dallas ISD. We haven't received any responses regarding the proposed zoning request, and staff's recommendation is that the detailed site plan for a child care facility be approved with the special exceptions. And also, I'd like to note the condition that the subject property be replatted prior to the issuance of any building permit for the proposed development. And that's all I have for my presentation, but if you all do have any questions for staff, I'm more than happy to answer anything.
Thank you, Chris. Does the applicant have a presentation? No, okay. Okay, so I'm going to open it up for questions to both staff and the applicant. And I think just to keep things orderly, we're going to start on my left. So we'll start with Roger. Any questions for staff or the applicant?
I have questions for both.
All right,
Just
super.
one question, though, for staff, and that is specifically as you were discussing the parking. The additional parking you said, is that going to be specifically used parking for the kid property only, or will the second phase be allowed to use that parking in the future?
I'll let the applicant expand on that, but overall, it will allow for additional future parking for the second phase of development as well, or it can be used by the future development.
Okay, and then the other questions I have is for the applicant.
Okay.
If you could state your name and address for the record,
Yes,
please.
Devin Nguyen, 825 Eagles Cliff Landing, Wiley, Texas, 75098.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. I just had a few questions. Have you or your organization done any sort of feasibility studies regarding sustainability of this business in that area, in that location? We have a Montessori school next door. I'm just wondering if you've done any studies or contacted anyone regarding these.
Well, I'm going to let the owners speak to that a little bit more because they are more versed on the program of the school, what differentiation between them and the Montessori next door. We were brought to this project, and I'm assuming that they've done all their studies, but I'll have my client back here.
Sure.
It's a good question, Mr. Neal, and sorry, it seems like the buck keeps
Can you state your name and address for the record,
Oh,
please?
sure. My name is Ali Gawani. Address is 1068 Ivory Horn Drive in Carrollton, Texas, 75010.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question. So one of the things with Kitty Academy is that they do a lot of the analysis for us in terms of the conduciveness of having a facility such as this. And so we're well aware of the Montessori next door. And so one of the things they provide is a size assessment report, if I recall correctly. And it provides an index level of number of households in the area, number of children that would be using our facility, the gap in the supply and demand of such facilities. We've also called, my business partner and I, Samina, and I have called and reached out to various facilities to see what they're offering. And so we feel quite confident that given what we've known and the fact that the numbers that were provided to us are a few years old, that does not include a lot of the development that's occurred, the planned development that's occurred over the past few years with the new homes coming in, especially catering to some of these young families. So we feel quite confident that given that there should be sufficient interest and demand for this childcare facility.
Okay. Great. And the only last question I have is regarding just sort of a general overall operation of hours and how that might look and feel. My concern is a little bit around maybe traffic flow on Mercer Parkway or Perrin. Could you talk to me a little bit generally how that business works? Is it that the students generally arrive 7, 8 in the morning all together or different times? Could you just
It's a good question.
cover that highly for me?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. My wife and I have 2 young kids ourselves, so we do drop them off to childcare facilities as well. And so we were very fortunate that during the development process, I know Sarupa and Chris and others have been involved in it, we were able to get the in and out view from Mercer. And so the flow is actually really conducive and very good. We have a portico share, so people aren't parking and then getting out with their child or children in and out as well as much. And so it definitely helps the flow. The flow varies. Initially, we are planning to have the facility open as early as 6:30, but depending on resource constraints and everything else, we have to evaluate that as we get closer to that time frame. But nonetheless, the plan is to open up early, around 6:30. We've seen, in our experience as well, it usually is 2-3 hours before all the kids that are supposed to attend that day do show up. So we do, it's not like everyone shows up at 7 o'clock as they're on their way to work. So we do see a fairly large segment of time where the students are coming in. And the same on the later in the afternoon. Usually I'm guilty of picking my child up very late, but I don't think that's all the parents. So we do see around 3 o'clock is usually the time that many parents start coming in, but it trickles into about 6:30.
That's all I have right now.
Amber.
Yes, I understand that as a franchisee, as you mentioned, you've received a lot of assistance and likely in the plans. We heard a little bit from staff in the earlier meeting. And it was brought up a bit in terms of the parking. One of my concerns is that this site is, at least presently, is presented over-parked. Could you talk to me a little about that, or any way you might see to reduce that, or how that parking might be shared with the other businesses to the north in that second phase?
Sure. Would you like for me to?
Yes, sir. Yes, I understand that we are over parking right now. However, this is phase 1 of phase 2 of the entire development to the north. And for us to meet the parking requirements for the retail portion that we're planning, we have to have these parking spaces. And right now, it makes sense for us to go ahead and put those parking spaces all along the northern portion of the school there for future development, which is soon to be after this one here. And that's the reason why that we are over parked right now, but we do require those parking spaces to meet the requirements for the future development.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brittle.
So any idea what's going in the future space?
Right now, we have understanding that, we are coming in for, we will be going in for a special use permit. Right now, it's going to be retail. There's 2 buildings. As you can see on the overall site plan, there's 2 buildings. Right now, the only one that we have for sure that is interested in it will be a dental office. Mm-hmm. And then there might be a cafe, maybe a restaurant. Mm-hmm. I don't exactly know who the tenants are yet, but we are, that's what we're anticipating, and that's what we're hoping for. And also, to the right there, there's also a future retail. Like I said, it'll be like a coffee shop or something with a drive-through, and understanding that, we are going to come in, we need to go in for a special use permit on that later on.
Right. And some of those things are needed. When does construction start on this, when you're okay through all of our process?
We're a little bit behind schedule, but we're trying to get it done as soon as possible. And I think Ali here can probably talk to you a little bit more about what the program wanted, when are they wanting to start construction and when they want to finish.
Hi, it's a good question. We've been very eager to get construction going, given inflation, given interest rate rises and what have you. But the goal is to start as soon as we can, given the approval. We've already reached out to various general contractors for bids. We're working with the bank. As a matter of fact, I was working with Small Business Association, SBA, for lending, and we were finalizing some things today with the bank. So we're excited and want to kick this project off as soon as we have the approvals from not only the city council members, but then also the bank.
So does that take a year? I mean, what would your opening time be for the fall? Or not, you wouldn't be through by then?
Fall of this year?
Yeah, this year.
No, it would not be fall of this year. I think that'll be quite aggressive, but our goal is to open sooner rather than later. And right now, I think, if Devin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at sometime early next year, first quarter or second quarter of next year.
Yes, around March.
That's good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, just in like a Venn diagram of your offering and who your ideal client is and the Montessori school. Are you sit right on top of each other, or do you have like a different offering? Like how will you be just directly competing with each other, or a symbiotic relationship?
Sure. A good question, because that's something that we evaluate as well. We actually met with the folks from the Montessori next door, and we, at least coming on set of it, truly see this as a collaborative effort. There's definitely enough kids to go around, so to speak. And even looking at a curriculum, it does differentiate. We have a fully staffed educational department that focuses on research. We have our core values, our life essential program. So it's truly an educational academy that we're focusing on. And so I do believe that we're going to be offering something different, but at the same time, something that we can work together in. To such an extent, when Kiddie Academy came last year, as we were driving by Farmers Branch, they felt there was such a great need and demand given all the new families that are coming into the area, the new homes that are going up. We wanted to make sure that we were serving the needs of the community as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pat, going to start and come back.
Yes, thank you. Are you also the owner of the entire lot there? So the 2 retail future, that would be your decision,
Not necessarily my decision. I think it'll be more my wife's decision,
Okay.
and
Oh,
Samina.
sorry,
So
okay. All right.
it's actually it's 4 of us that own it, and to be quite frank, a good friend of ours. We serve in our community city council or governing board, and I was education board chair for many years for our community. Had 450 students between the ages of 6 months and 6 years, and all voluntary based, about 125 volunteers. Samina, on the other hand, who's the other lady, and the partnership, along with her husband, she was responsible as a principal overseeing 1,200 students within our Carathon facility here. And so we have a passion for this type of work. And so Samina and my wife own majority of the company, and then Sean and I own the remaining. So it is our decision, I would say, but more so theirs.
Okay.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Petraza.
What age students are you targeting, given that there's more of an educational focus? Is it still like a preschool, or are you looking at like kids older than 5?
A great question. Our focus is really early childhood development, and that goes from between 6 months to about 5 years. And that's our true focus. We do plan, but we do have the option of having it for preschool students and a little bit older age group. But that's not really our focus. To be quite frank, our focus is really to make sure these students are well prepared, so when they go to KILT or to Farmers Branch ISD, they're well suited to be successful and thrive in that environment.
Thank you. And I have another question about the 4th exception. And the slide that was in your presentation, there was a yellow strip that I assume showed the water line and maybe the easement. And that was sort of the reason why we weren't doing the street trees on Perrin, but then the street trees that are on Parent lie directly in that yellow strip. And so I'm just curious, maybe you could explain to me.
Yeah, so the water line, really, it runs about here, and then there is an easement. But as far as these trees go per the development, they were able to have some space to set those trees a little bit further back, but still be technically within that. As you continue on down, you start getting into, I believe, a future retaining wall, some fencing, and then you're also into the outdoor recreation area of the Kiddie Academy there. So that was going to be kind of what forced it. Also, that water line, I don't believe, if I'm recalling correctly, ran the entire extent. It came partway up and then dropped off.
So because the outdoor learning area is pushing towards Perrin, there's not enough room between the water line and where they want to start is that right?
That's part of it. There's also a certain requirement for where those street trees have to be planted, and if they were to be pushed more inward, it would be outside of where that required street tree area is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Zavala.
So I'd like to go back to Devin, to your response to Commissioner Raley's question about the parking, because I'm probably less likely to accept your responses like that being path forward. you're proposing to build it now because you believe that there's this development coming, yet you don't know what the development is. You just said you have a dentist coming, which I was
No,
not thrilled.
we know
Let me-
for
let me
sure
just- Let
that.
me finish real quick, and then you
Oh,
can
sorry.
respond, all right? So I'm less inclined to go with let's build it now, and then the businesses will come, right? You can always rip up the landscaping later if you bring a business that justifies the added parking. So I would like to see less parking in what you're proposing. I can get behind the other three exceptions that you guys have detailed here, but I think the idea of just let's build parking now because the future businesses are going to require it, I think that's flawed thinking. I can understand, especially now. Who wants to build now, right? Everything costs twice as much as it did 2-3 years ago. I would prefer maybe a wait and see approach to what the actual business is going to be before you start placing a bunch of concrete out here and saying that, hey, parking is going to be required for these 2 future businesses.
Yes, I think that's something that we can probably talk over with the owners. And the reason why we came with it in the first place was just because we're going into the retail portion, like immediately after this. It's in design right now, as a matter of fact. And they want to have the same contractor that will be constructing Kiddie Academy, construct the retail portion as well, like just one after another to save costs, and to save costs on setting up and staging. And that's the reason why they decided to go ahead and put the parking in now. However, I am more than open to go ahead and reduce the parking now as well. That's something that, we can discuss with the owners.
Yeah, I just think some of that parking that you have out there could be added landscape right now, and it wouldn't hurt. I'm not saying that it needs to be landscape, but just some green space. I think we prefer more green space in this community than most, and I think just looking at whichever one of these 2 buildings you had laid out here as being the proposed dentist, whether it be the 4,800 square foot or the 9,600 square foot, there's a lot of parking there already to begin with.
It's within the 9,800 square feet building, a suite of
I don't
that.
see there being like 40 people going to the dentist at the same time.
No,
Plus, right? I mean, that's kind of just logically thinking this through.
Right, I understand. And right now, because we don't know exactly who's going to go in there, and I took what the requirements are of parking spaces wise as far as retail, which is 1 to 200, and I come with a generic number for the parking spaces that's required, and that's why I kind of, designed it the way I did.
And, I appreciate that. You're right, you're going through the criteria, right? That's how you're looking at this, so I understand that. I think that, if you came to the board or to the commission here later, I'm sure that there'd be willingness to have less parking if we felt that it required less parking, if that allows more green space to be at a certain development. That's kind of just how I'm looking at it. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but that's my perspective.
Okay.
That's all I have. Chairman.
Thank you. The only other thing that I can recall we discussed in study session is there was some questions about where there are other Kiddie Academies located in the Metroplex area. So if someone could give us some information, maybe just a little bit of information about the business.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we just came from a few weeks ago. We were in Austin. Kiddie Academy was holding a national conference there, and so they brought in all the franchisees, and we were using it as a learning and development opportunity. And so we had an opportunity to actually meet with some of the franchise owners and operators, along with the directors. They were invited as well to attend, and so we had a great opportunity to learn from them. We've already been speaking with them. Alan, we've spoken with Jim in Allen, Texas, Alliance, Texas, northern Dallas area as well. And so Arlington, I believe, the other one that we're speaking with. So we met with many of them. That's what I can recall on top of my head. There's 4 or 5 within DFW Metroplex that are already either functioning or for the most part, they're all up. I think we and maybe one other one that I can't recall, but I think one other one is also going through the construction cycle right now. But all of them have been up and they've been quite doing well. I think the product that we are offering and the services we're offering is quite needed.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioners, any more questions? Commissioner Brittle.
Yeah, give us your background again. I know that you went over it, it seemed nice, but can you give us a little bit more on running this facility?
Sure. So I can give you my professional background. This is really a passion project for us because something that we truly believe in, whether that's within our Somali Muslim community or in general. So professionally, I work at Amazon Robotics, and so that's what I do during the day and usually the night as well. And then my wife, I don't want to speak for her, but she's a speech language pathologist in the school system as well. And that's the other differentiator we want to bring to this academy, is mainly because we've seen that if you can adjust and kind of intervene at an early age, especially when it comes to speech, many of the students thrive a lot better and have that sense of confidence when they are in school. So that's what we do professionally. In terms of my background, I did serve in our community as a chairman for our education board for 3 years. Our terms are 3 years. And so I served in that capacity, essentially education for all of our birth, or 6 months is what we call it, through college years or young professional years before we hand them off to the professionals network. But the curriculum is there, and we've corrected it as a proprietary content. As early as 6 months, a child is required, along with their parent, to come on a monthly basis, and then kind of extends upon that. So this is something we truly believe in. A lot of us are byproducts of this sort of program, and I know our kids are a beneficiary because they went through the same program, as well as professional educational development that we have them in various schools.
So will this have a bilingual component?
It absolutely will. Spanish is what we're focused on right now. But that doesn't say we may change that or provide other ways, especially if we feel that is something of an interest to the parents. Yeah.
Any more questions?
I just have, if you don't mind, I'd just like to piggyback on Commissioner Zavala's comments. You know, really, as I start to look at it, and I start to look at all the parking that's currently in here with all the future development, I mean, the trend, that used to be that it was always like, you need more parking, we want parking. The trend now is less, you're right, across the United States. I mean, realizing that we're over-parked in the United States by substantial amounts, right? There's just, and so that whole idea of, you know, build it now, and then knowing it could be a gift back to you to say you could save some costs on this first phase, right, until you really see what's coming in, and then you step in and do the parking that you really need. So it's just really, I would encourage you to consider that.
You know, I would say absolutely. It's, you know, Samin and I have been focused on this development for you know, quite a while now. We've added a facade on top, which are off of natural lighting. That was something of an interest to us. We are providing an outdoor learning center. These things will add cost, but it's something that we truly believe in. We want the students to be outside and experience outside. Parking is the other thing we looked at. We asked Devin to make sure that there is sufficient tree covering, because parking is great, but I want to make sure my car is under shade because it gets very hot here as well. So completely understand. I think we're just trying to be mindful of cost. I believe we have to be mindful. I think we have a certain amount of parking spaces that is required for this educational facility. I think it's 34 or something of that sort. And, and I think we have 40 something at the moment. 27 is required, and we have 40. So for some reason I thought it was around 30, but nonetheless, we can absolutely look at it. We were just being mindful of cost. And to answer your question, Mr. Zavala, about the dentist, is someone that's shown interest to it, especially with a lot of young families and young kids. They want to focus on dentistry for kids. We're talking with them and speaking with them. We've gone back and forth on contract negotiations. So we've already passed the LOI stage, but we're still talking, nothing's signed, nothing's happened, you know, in that sense. And they know that, you know, our focus is Kiddie Academy, and then we'll focus on next when that time comes.
My whole comment to it, being a dentist, whatever business you select to bring onto your development, that is that's your business. But again, you don't need that much parking.
Agree.
That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, no, I totally get it. And we want to minimize parking. You know, we don't like it because it, you know, it becomes a heat sink for the environment. Like, we want trees, we want to totally get it. And I think we're just being mindful of cost as well, just given the inflationary situations happening and other things around it. So, but we will take a look at it.
It can be as little as grass, just putting in grass. You have to sprinkle it though, but that's, I would assume, cheaper than concrete.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I just have to add, you mentioned a dentist for kids, and we have seen an influx of regular dentists here, but we don't have any pediatric dentists. I drive to Plano for my kids to go to pediatric dentists.
We do too. We do too.
You know, that is a distinction that would be appealing. I'm a mom that lives in Farmers Branch.
Yeah, no, I agree. We do too. We live in Carrollton, and we would drive quite a ways away, especially to find the good dentist that we really want. Thank you for bringing that point.
All right, thank you both. This is a public hearing. I will now open the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak on this topic, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing we have no one here to speak, and I don't believe there's anyone on Zoom, so I will now close the public hearing. And commissioners, I will entertain a motion. There is a staff recommendation that may be a good starting point. There's already a condition, and so if we're going to add a parking condition, maybe we have 2 conditions, so just as some guidance.
So I'll go ahead and make the motion, but just so I word this properly, just a question, because I don't want to tell them how many spots to provide us, right? But I'd like to see a lot less, closer to the minimum requirement, which is 27. So I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the detailed site plan with special exceptions and conditions referenced above. That condition being that the property be replatted prior to the issuance of any building permit. I would also like to add an exception that the parking spaces currently provided, which I believe is 44, be reduced closer to the minimum required, which is 27, and replace that with green space or landscaping, as you guys see fit for your development.
So I have a motion from Commissioner Zavala that recommends approval of this detailed site plan for a child care facility with special exceptions with the condition that the subject property be replatted prior to the issuance of any building permit, and as a condition that the parking be reduced to be more in alignment with the minimum standard recommended of 27. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Brittle. All in favor? 6-4 against, 1 against. Did you get that, Brian? Yes. Okay, super. With that, this goes to City Council.
July 11th.
July 11th.
July 19th.
Sorry. This goes to City Council July 19th. So thank you so much for working with Farmers Branch. And commissioners, if there's nothing else, I will close the meeting at 7:47 p.m.